Hello, and thank you so much for joining me for some Saturday night crafting. I'm going to apologize now if you can hear a humming noise in the background. I've got my fan on, actually my little air conditioning unit, because it's 31 degrees today and I am dying in my loft office. So tonight we are starting out with Christmas in July, and I'm so excited about this video with you guys. I love doing a bulk card making session every single time I do Christmas cards with you. I like to do at least one to give you ideas and inspiration if you've got a whole bunch of cards that you need to make. So these cards that I'm making tonight are probably going to go to my neighbors that live down my street. I give out quite a lot of Christmas cards, usually to neighbors. So that's what I'm going to use these for. And I'm going to use up this new paper pad from Paper Rose. This is a brand new collection that is just come out. You can get it in 6x6 or 12x12. And I went for 6x6 because I like using that for card making. Now, the big thing about tonight's video is we are going to use every single bit of scrap. Not one bit of this paper is going to waste. We are using every little element of it, and I'm going to show you how to make a card, an envelope, and have a little gift as well. So this one here has got 18 sheets of double-sided paper, and I'm going to use every one of those sheets. We're going to use every little bit of scrap we cut off. And I'm also going to use some card bases. So I've got some A5 card bases that I'm going to fold in half. I get them from a company called Lime Tree in the UK. I just get standard plain white card and I fold it in half myself. I've got some blue colored cardstock that kind of goes with my paper. And I've also got some silver foil card that I've had for years that got really cheap. So I thought I would try and intermingle that in as well. Now I'm going to do some very basic cards to show you how to make really fast, quick cards that look lovely. I'm also going to then step it up and step it up and step it up. So I think I've got 4 different stepped up versions of the card that I'm making today. So if you don't like how it looks as a basic form, then I'm going to share with you some more ways of how you can make it a fancier form as well. So I'm just going through all the patterns of these papers and picking out the ones that I want to use as the fronts of my cards and making sure that those ones are all the right way up. Then I'm going to go ahead and fold all my card bases. So I'm doing, I ended up with 17 cards because I did pull out one of the sheets, one of the 18 sheets to use the little elements from, and you'll see that a bit later on in the video. So I do make 17 cards rather than 18 cards with my 18 pieces of paper. But this is a really great value for money kind of project. So the little paper pack that I'm using tonight is really inexpensive. I love Paper Rose for that. They do really reasonable paper packs. But you can use any papers you've got. You don't even need to make Christmas cards. If you want to do a big bulk project of birthday cards, just grab some papers that are more neutral and you can do the exact same thing. I'm just giving you some design layouts and some ideas and inspiration on how you can make bulk card making in a short amount of time and get loads of really beautiful cards out of it. So the first thing I'm doing is cutting it to size to fit onto my card front. So I know across the world you have different size papers, so I don't want to say exactly what my measurements are because it's all going to depend on what country you're in and what size cardstock you have. But I am going for roughly 1/8 of an inch smaller than my card base for my blue layer, and then 1/8 of an inch smaller than that for my very top layer. So I'm getting a nice tiny little border of blue. Actually, I think I do a little bit smaller than 1/8 of an inch for the blue layer. So I've got about 1/8 of an inch around the outside of the card. You'll see in a second. So I've got that nice little tiny blue border going on. And then when I put it onto my card base, I've got a slightly bigger white border around that. And I just like how that looks. You could go smaller if you fancied. You could have a nice small panel in the middle of your card. You don't need to have it as big as mine, but I really wanted to show off that pattern paper and let that be the star of the show. So I'm going to go ahead and cut myself all of my bases, or all my layers, I should say, for my cards. And I do that all at the start. So I kind of do one section at a time just to kind of keep my process going nice and smooth. And I am keeping every little scrap along the way. Now, when I was doing this, I worked out a nice little handy trick. I thought this is getting annoying trying to look for my measurements each time because I was doing about 1/8 of an inch, which in centimeters then can be a little bit of a funny number. So I thought, oh, I'll just grab my low tack tape, my mint tape from scrapbookdotcom, and I will just place that onto my paper trimmer right where the mark is that I want to cut at for both sides. And then that way I can just slide my piece of paper in and it buds up right next to that low tack tape. And it means that I can cut super fast and super quick because I don't have to think about anything. I think I watched 2 movies while I did all these cards. I really enjoyed just chilling out. So my paper here, you can see it goes right up to that tape and it does stop. It gives it a little bit of a kind of nudge to work against. And it went really, really quickly after I did this. So it's a great way to make the most out of your paper trimmer is just grab some low tack tape I mean, even a post-it note would work really well. You could rip up a post-it note and stick it in there, as long as it's got a nice flat edge that you can put that paper up against, and then it just makes your cutting and your trimming going so much quicker. So once I'd done that for all my designer papers, I then adjusted my little bits of tape so I could do my blue bits of card, and then did the exact same thing. I went ahead and cut up my blue bits of card and kept all those scraps to the side. So here's what I'm left with. I've got my pile of cards ready and my layers ready, and then all those little scrappy bits. Now the next thing to do is make a plan for how we want the layout to be. Now I know a lot of people don't have dies or die cutting machines, and you could do this similar thing with punches. If you've got some layering punches, you could do a very similar thing. I wanted to make the most of my cardstock and not have any extra waste. And because we're going to cover up this blue, I thought it would be great to make the most of the center of the blue and use that for the frame on the front of the card. I have this little Merry Christmas stamp and I wanted to use that, so I found a die that fit that. And the nice thing with these dies from Crop-A-Dile is that they are outline dies only, so they're like a border only, and they're fantastic. So you can get that border and then the center cut out, which means that I get a 2-for-1 with each die cut I get. So I'm going to go ahead and cut these out. Then I don't have to worry about stacking my dies to make a border as well. And I know that Paper Rose also do some of these, and I know scrapbookdotcom I think do some as well, but I only have the framed ones in rectangle form from Crop-A-Dile, and so that's what I'm using here. So you can see here I've cut out the middle. No one's going to see that's missing. I've got this gorgeous frame that I'm going to use, and then I have this spare bonus little rectangle that I can use on a different project. So I'm going to go ahead and cut out the frame out of the middle of all of them. And then I used some scrap bits of white cardstock that were offcuts from other projects, and I die cut out some white ones. And then that way I've got some white frames and some white inner squares. And I obviously want the white squares to go inside my blue frames. So I'm going to take my blue squares and my white frames and put those aside for another card. And I think I made like 20 or 25 by accident. I just kind of got carried away and wasn't really thinking about how many I was doing. So I did cut more than I needed. I do have quite a few left over. And then I also changed up my plan a little bit as well when I did some more advanced designs. So I didn't use them all up, so it probably wasn't the best idea to go ahead and bulk cut out everything right at the very start. But I enjoyed the process and I was having a good time, so it doesn't really matter. Now I wanted to also bulk stamp out my sentiments, so I decided to pop my frame back inside the offcut of my die. And that allows me to then have a nice little frame that will hold that inner piece that I've already die cut out of the white. So once that's done, I'll just trim off that excess tape so it doesn't stick to anything. I didn't actually need that much tape on it, but I wanted to make sure it didn't shift anywhere because it didn't really have a very big offcut piece. So I'll take some low tack tape and tape that into my stamping platform. And then I can go ahead and stamp multiple sentiments, and they'll all be exactly perfect because I'll line up my stamp to fit inside that nice rectangle. And then all of my stamps will be exactly in the same place each time. Now I did have a look through my stash for a nice blue ink that would match that blue cardstock I used, and the only one I had that matched was this distress ink. Now distress ink can be very difficult to stamp with, so I made sure that my ink pad was nice and juicy. I re-inked it with my reinker, and then I just stamped 2 to 3 times per stamp sentiment, and then I got a really nice crisp clear image. But don't be disheartened if you're struggling with the distress inks if you want to stamp with them. They're meant for coloring and inking. They're not really meant for stamping, but you can stamp with them. You just need a stamp platform and kind of go over it a couple times. The other thing to bear in mind is that the stamp I'm using is a photopolymer stamp, and a lot of stamps on the market are silicone stamps, and those ones definitely really struggle with holding on to ink. Whereas a photopolymer one is a bit of a higher quality and it will hold that ink a bit better and easier. So once I've got all those stamped down, I can then start bulk assembling. So I'm going to glue on my background piece or my first layer onto my card base. And then I can go ahead and add on my designer paper onto the top of that layer. And then I can add on my sentiment layers onto that. Now I do actually go ahead and do each layer individually, but I wanted to share with you one finished one first before I went ahead and started bulk making them. And then I could share with you how to step it up as well. So to add some more interest to the front of this card, I'm adding a bit of foam tape on the back of my sentiment and popping it up off the card. And that is my first bulk card finished and made. This is the basic version, which I love, but I am going to step it up a little bit. With the next one, I'm going to add on my layers as I did the first time. But for this one, I'm going to add a tiny bit more interest, and I'm taking some silver thread and I'm just going to make a big kind of blob of it on using my fingers and stick that onto the back of the sentiment so it pokes out the sides a little bit. I love doing this and adding a little bit more shine or a little bit of something extra onto it. And it's so simple and easy to do. And you can buy metallic threads for really quite cheap if you buy embroidery thread. That's the key. You can get a massive, massive reel of that. But I love this look. So I put it down onto my card, exact same as the first one. But it's just got a little bit more character to it by having that little bit of thread sticking out the top and the bottom. Now, if you want to step it up a little bit more and you've got a bit more time and a bit more supplies, we can go ahead and add some silver in. Now, what you can do as well is you could cut out of this silver before you stick it down. I was just kind of getting ahead of my game and having a bit of a play, but what you can do is do the same thing as I've done with the blue layer and cut yourself something nice out of the silver layer before gluing it all down and together. So I've gone ahead and added that silver layer behind, which just gives a little bit of shine. And now you can go ahead and add a silver layer if you wanted as well, which will blend nicely in with the background. I'm going to keep it fairly simple, and this time I'm going to do the same as the last one. I'm going to add on my sentiment layers, and I'm going to add that silver twine to kind of tie in with the silver in the background. And that just kind of steps it up just a little bit more, uses a few more supplies, but is beautiful and stunning. Now, if you have more time and more supplies, you can go ahead and add in another die cut. So this is where I'm going to bring in a frame die and cut out of that silver. So I've got a nice silver background. And then I've also got a sentiment die set. Now this does take more time and it is a longer process if you're doing bulk card making, but I do like the final result of this as well. So I'm going to take my dies, I'm going to find one that fits my sentiment really nicely and then use that die to cut out my silver. And then I can take some of my scraps and cut out my sentiments using the scrap blue and white. And then I also took some of my double-sided sticky tape, put that on the back of the white card so I could just peel off those words and pop them right on top of my blue background, the outline for the die. And it turns out so cute. You could obviously stack these sentiments if you wanted as well, but I felt like it was just enough as it was, given I wanted to do some bulk card making. I didn't want to overcomplicate things. And then it's just a simple case of adding all those layers onto the card base again and gluing them down. And obviously you've got this nice big ugly mess in the middle, but no one sees that, you don't know, and then that sentiment's going right over the top of it. Now off screen I went ahead and assembled another one using slightly different color combinations, and I'm not sure which one I like more. I think I like the one on the right more than the one on the left. I feel like it just is a little bit less glaring and shiny, but I still really like both of them. But this is a great way that you can step it up just a little bit more and add a little bit more dimension and character to your cards. Now off screen, I went ahead and added my layers together, and I originally decided that I was going to go for version number 2 with the nice silver thread behind it. But then while I was working, my scrapbookdotcom order of Christmassy stuff arrived, and so I thought I really wanted to use some of these things. So I decided to go ahead and make another couple versions where I added in my stamped sentiments as well as the stars that I got as die cuts. So here are my finished cards. I went with the design with the thread behind it. I found some blue metallic thread as well, and so I did a mix of blue and silver together behind those. Here's the one with the stars that I added in there as well, and then there's my Merry Christmas sentiment that I got from scrapbook.com. So I had a lot of fun making these cards and creating all these designs, and I feel like they slightly look a little bit unique. Not every neighbor will get the same card, but they were all nice and easy enough that I didn't need heaps and heaps of supplies on my desk either. So those are the ideas for the cards, but let's jazz up our envelopes and have envelopes that match, and let's use up the rest of those scraps and let's make a little gift as well. So the cards are done, we can tuck those aside, and let's think about some envelopes. We've got those little strips left over, as well as that little designer sheet which has the cute little elements on it and the little sentiments. So I thought I would go ahead and grab the first 2 that I saved from my pile of scraps, and I'm going to go ahead and cut out all the elements. So I'll do that on the full sheet as well as these little strips. Now my original plan was to leave them as is and put them onto my envelopes, but I thought actually I wanted them to look a bit like a envelope seal. And so I got out some circle dies and decided to cut some of the images with the circle die and then back it with a silver circle as well, just to give it a bit more character. I got out my corner rounders. I have 3 sets of corner rounders, and I ended up going for the original shape instead of the funky ones. I felt like the funky ones kind of cut in too deep. So the original corner rounder, I used the 1/4 inch corner rounder. So just a nice small little rounding. And I did that on some of them. And on the other ones, I went ahead and used my circle dies to cut out some of those images. I'm really thrilled I did it this way because they are so cute and pretty. And the dies I used have a stitching on them, so they're from Paper Rose. However, when I cut out the 2 coordinating dies, the ones that go in a row, I had a really massive border. So I decided to change my mind at this point and pulled out another set of circle dies, the infinity dies. And it didn't matter that the stitching wasn't there on the slightly smaller one because you couldn't see it on the silver cardstock anyways. So I cut myself out a bunch of those images and then glued them all onto my little silver backed discs, and they are so cute. I love how these turned out, and I think they're really gorgeous, and it's an easy way to use some of that designer paper and use any images that you might have on it to make a really cute envelope closure. So here are the rectangular ones. I just rounded the corners and kept them as is. Now the easiest way to attach them on is a little bit of liquid glue, or you could use a bit of a tape runner, would work really nicely as well. I did find with my liquid glue that liquid glue kind of got the envelope glue on the back of the envelope a bit damp, and I did have it stick together to my envelope a little bit. So a tape runner might actually be better than liquid glue, or less liquid glue than I used. But how cute is that? That little envelope closure. It's just got this cute little image that ties in with the cards and ties in with the color scheme. You could of course put it on the front of the card or front of the envelope as well. In one of the corners, it would look really cute, but I just loved how it looked as a closure on the back of my envelope. I absolutely love how these turned out. I think it's super cute. It gives a little bit of excitement on the back of the envelope. And I thought, let's use up these strips because we have them left over as scraps. So I was trying to have a think about where I could put them on the envelope. I thought you could put it along the bottom. I've seen other people do this before. You add a little strip along the bottom to kind of tie it in with your card. I didn't quite like how it looked in the end. I tried one on the back underneath the little flap. One of my next ones, and I did like how that looked a bit more. It kind of added a bit more character to the back, but then again, I wasn't adding anything to the front of the envelope, and that's what I really wanted to do. And it wasn't until I started thinking, oh yeah, I could just put them on an angle on the side, and then I can use up those blue scraps as well. So these are all the little blue scraps that I had left over from cutting my layers for the front of the card, and those are going to go on there as well. And then I also had some silver ones that I had left over just from trimming down some of my silver cardstock to fit on the front of my card. So I went ahead and grabbed all of those scraps and started gluing them onto the fronts of the envelopes. And then that made them coordinate and tie in with my cards even more. And I loved how this looked. It was just a little bit more on the front of the envelope. Really gorgeous. And this will go through the post as well, and it shouldn't cause you any issues. So here they are all done, fronts and backs decorated. All of those scraps were used up, and they all match my cards. So I love it. It was such a quick and easy thing to do. Again, I was just watching a movie and I didn't have to use my brain, which I love that kind of crafting. I find it really therapeutic. Now we have one set of scraps left over, and it's these ones. And these ones to me just screamed bookmarks. I thought, who wouldn't want a cute little Christmas bookmark to go with their little Christmas card? So I got out the laminator. I don't recommend this laminator, so I'm not going to link it down below. It kind of does irritate me. If you've got a laminator that you use that you can recommend, please tell me. I'm looking for one that gets properly hot, because this one doesn't get hot enough to really seal my laminating sheets overly well, especially if I'm using a slightly thicker than paper bit of card. But it worked enough for these bookmarks. I just ran it through twice per little sheet of bookmarks, and that seemed to be okay. But if you do have one you could recommend to me, please pop it in the comments. I would love to know about it. But I thought I'll laminate all these bits of card and trim them out, and then I will have little bookmarks I can make and give to people. Trimming them was super easy. I just glided my scissors along them like you would like cutting wrapping paper, and all of that extra laminating paper just came straight off, or plastic I should say. And my corner rounder is getting a little bit dull, so I had to corner round twice on each of these bookmarks on each corner. But they look so cute. The corner rounder just finishes them off really, really nicely. I wanted to add a little bit more to these bookmarks and decided to add some ribbon onto them. So I have got this Crop-A-Dile, and one side punches a small hole, the other side punches a slightly bigger hole. It's got a nice little measuring tool so you can set the depth of how deep you want that hole to go. You punch it, grab your little eyelet, pop it in the hole, and then the middle bit, which looks like a pair of dentist pliers, is what squishes that eyelet shut and gives you a really beautiful finish. So I just picked my favorite side of the bookmark and was thinking about which cards would match the bookmarks, and then made that sort of the front of the bookmark. And then I've got this Sheen ribbon, which I think I got from Sheen, the website. I got a bulk of, I think, about 10 rolls of it for only a few pounds. So it was a really, really good bargain. but I'm going to use that sheen ribbon through the back of my bookmark, and then I kind of loop it in on itself to give it that kind of tassel-y look. I did that with all the bookmarks, and I actually didn't have enough for every single card because I did use some of those scraps up as the bits that went onto the back of my envelopes. But I had, I think, 15 of them, which isn't too bad, and I was really, really happy with how they turned out. They have a very professional, durable feel to them, and they fit beautifully inside the envelope, inside the card, because they aren't any bigger than the actual card base. So I went ahead and pulled them all out and matched them all up. So I had that matching bookmark with the card as well as the envelope, if I could. If I had enough that matched, then I did that. But here you can see that it fits beautifully inside the envelope. No problems at all. And I thought it'd be a really sweet little gift that I can give to all my neighbors when I give them a little Christmas card. So I hope you enjoyed this one and that you've got some inspiration on how to bulk card make and use up all of your bits of cardstock and have a nice little coordinating envelope and gift to give to people. So thank you so much for joining me tonight for some crafting. I hope you enjoyed this one. If you did, please don't forget to like and comment and subscribe if you aren't already. Those are the things that keeps this channel going for free. Honestly, it means the world to me and it keeps me doing this and doing what I love. So thank you so much for joining me tonight. Have a fantastic weekend. If you're in the UK, I hope you're not melting to bits like I am. Take care, keep safe, and I'll see you next week. Bye.